Good morning, good afternoon, good night. I'm Blackbright, and like I say, I put my disclaimer. I'm not an immigration lawyer. I'm just sharing information. Okay? Now, this video is for those of you who've been in the UK in excess of 20 years or approaching 20 years, and you're wondering whether or not to legitimize yourself. You know, you're thinking to yourself, oh, well, they've said as long as you're in the country for 20 years and even if you've overstayed, you can still apply for your indefinite leave to remain. Now, why do you think they would say something like that? There has to be an element of truth in it, of course, but what are the sticky points? Well, first of all, in order for you to qualify under the 20 years, you need to have lived legally, continuously in the country, not coming out of it for 6 months at a time or 540 days within the 10 years and all that kind of stuff. So supposing you have lived in the country continuously for 12 years and you haven't breached that 6 months and 540 days, you'll probably think, oh yeah, I'm okay. No. Now, depending on whether or not you were lawful at the time you entered the country, that is one of the criteria. You have to have been a legal resident. So it's kind of contradictory, really, because if you overstayed your visa, that makes you unlawful. It means you've overstayed. So I don't understand. On the one hand, they're saying if you overstayed, you can get your 20 years. And on the other hand, they're looking at that and saying, well, that is a reason why it's not seen as continuous. The only thing I can get from that to say, well, it's not how to make it not contradictory, is that supposing you came into the country illegally and then you had a spate of like 10 years or something, you might have got married to someone or something and you became legal, I would have thought that the 20 years would come to the point when you were legal, if you see what I mean. So if you got your stay through marrying someone, that would have made you legal at that point, and then the 20 years would kick in after that point. And that's the only way I don't see a contradiction. Now, another thing that could prevent you from getting the 20 years, you have to be of good character. Now, what do they call someone of good character? It means you have to be honest. Now, would they consider you honest if you overstayed in the first place? That's debatable, isn't it? All depends what you put on your application form. Do you remember what you put on your application form or who filed for you? Do you remember? Can you be consistent when you apply for your 20 years? That's debatable. That might also be perceived as being dishonest and not being of good character. So they might ask you for your employment history. And if they ask you for employment history, were you meant to be working? Another sign of not of good character. So there's lots of different things. Have you got a speeding fine? Did you have access to public funds? You had no recourse to public funds and yet you use the NHS. You see what I mean? They might say, oh, have you been in hospital? Did you have any surgery? That would show that you breached that part of your visa condition. So you have to be extremely, extremely careful. It's not straightforward. That's why I always say get a good immigration lawyer to siphon out all those little bits. If you still want to proceed, that is, based on the 20 years. And the thing is, with the 20 years, it's not, they say that you can have criminal convictions, apparently. You could have been detained in prison, and if you're detained in prison, you have to add that on to the 20 years. So supposing you was in prison for 5 years, which is really a deportable offence for foreign nationals anyway, so I don't even know why they put that in there. But if you suppose you was inside just for sake of argument, you was in jail for 5 years, but you'd been in the country for 20 years, you would have to have been in the country for 25 years. You see what I mean? To make up that 20 years. Even once you've been in the country for 20 years, just supposing you've been in the country for 20 years, they will give you an extension of 30 months. And that extension will be conditional. You won't have no recourse to public funds. You won't be able to go get any benefits. You won't be able to use NHS and all that kind of stuff. No recourse to public funds for those 30 months. And then they might give you an additional 10 years after all of that. But remember, for each application and each renewal, it's costing you mega bucks. So I wanted to there is so much information here. Before 2003, Jamaicans didn't even require a visa to come into the UK. They reckon it's because of drug smuggling and all that kind of stuff why they made Jamaicans pay for a visa. Apparently, post-Brexit, they're going to lift that visa restriction, and Commonwealth countries are going to be able to enter the UK without a visa. It's still in the proposal stages. I don't know if it's been finalised. As of 2017, it was still going ahead. So I'm not sure where we stand with that. Nigeria, they didn't get through, so they still need to apply for a visa. There's something about Jamaicans and Ghanaians that they tend to give us a hard time. They say that we are the largest group that overstay. So that is one of the reasons they give us a tough time. What else is there? I did say that your stay has to be lawful. And I was saying with that continuous 20 years. Now, that continuous 20 years includes the time when you have been applying for renewal. Now, supposing your visa ran out on, say, yesterday, you would have 14 days to make sure that it's that you've put in your application for renewal. Otherwise, that's going to be seen as a gap in continuous residence, and you're going to have to start from scratch another whole 10 years or another whole whatever it is to make it up. So there can't be any gaps. You need proof of entry into the UK in order to qualify for, this is really going to be the turn off. You need proof of entry into the UK if you're going to apply for the 20 years. Okay, what do they probably want to see? Maybe expired passports, boarding passes, plane tickets, stamp passports, temporary visas, academic qualifications, a national health, a national insurance number, tax ID number, GP registration, that's your doctor, of course. Voting documents if you managed to get any, employer's letter. Were you eligible to work? If you weren't, be careful of that one. Proof of earnings, P45, P60. I guess it shows that you were paying taxes and stuff. But if it's pre this Brexit thing, you have to be careful, because there was a point when employers weren't allowed to employ people who weren't documented. If it's before that period, you'll need to find out when that is. You'll probably be okay. You were allowed to work and blah, blah, blah. There was no penalties for the employer. So you would be able to give those employment details. Make sure it covers the whole period. You're going to need bills in your name and at your address. If you rent books, bank statements, lease agreements, anything like that. If you got married or if you've come in based on a partner, you're going to need, of course, you would have had to be married for 3 years, but then you would have to show you've lived together for a year, which means joint bank accounts, joint names on the rent book, those kind of things, joint names on the bills, on the council taxes. That's what you're going to need to prove. And that's why I'm calling this, if you're thinking about the 20 years, think again. like I talked about, the good character, that's going to be one where you might get flawed, because it's relative, isn't it, what a good character is. They might perceive, like I said, overstaying as being dishonest, and in that case that's not considered a good character. You'd have to own up to parking fines, speeding tickets, if you've accessed NHS for major surgery. Of course, you'd have to make sure you've got no criminal convictions. That goes without saying. In America, though, they actually ask you if you have ever committed a crime that you didn't get found out for. So what they're saying, I mean, can you imagine? So even though you didn't get caught and you didn't get convicted and you didn't get penalised for it, you're supposed to own up to that crime or that criminal activity. That's deep. Integrity, that's considered another trait of good character. One of the criteria of them allowing you into the country. Say what you mean. Integrity means you say what you mean and you mean what you say. How did you get your original visa? On what basis? Do you know what was put on the original visa? Do you have a copy of the original application? Will there be any inconsistencies? Did you, if it was based on marriage and the marriage is no longer, you're not married to that person, did you report those? Did you report a change of circumstances? You're going to be fingerprinted. So anyhow you came in on a false passport, forget it. If you've got more than one bank account, they're going to find you out. They also do Equifax checks. You know what Equifax is? Equifax is a credit check. So it checks every loan, debt, any kind of financial transaction. They can find that out about you. So no point lying at all. If you lie, that is what's going to put you at a disadvantage, and it's going to show you up as not being of a good character, and then they can toss you out on your ear. Did you come into the UK on your own cognizance? In other words, did you come on your own? You just filed a visa and you're not reliant on anyone. That might be to your advantage. I'm not sure. I'm just giving you information. What your finances like? You're going to need an income of at least 18,600. In some cases, depending on the circumstances, 20,800. If you've got a lot of money in your account, some people, they dump a lot of money in their account just to prove that they have money to sustain themselves. Goodness knows where they got the money from. They might have borrowed it or whatever they did, but they put it in the account, and and they think that the entry or the border control or the customs people are going to be happy to see a lot of money in the account. They're not. Number one, you're going to have to write the source of where you got the money from. You're going to have to show that source. So make sure that any money you put in your account is placed in there legitimately. Don't just get money and think, borrow money and think that, you can get away with, just building up your bank account to make it look good. It's not going to work. Also, that money has to be in that bank account for about, I think it's 90 days and 31 days before you even apply. So make sure it's coming from a credible source. Any amount of money you have in your bank account. If you say, oh, I've got it from a business, the money, I've earned it from a business, make sure your business is registered at Company House and that you've been paying your taxes and filing your accounts. There's no way out of it. You can't be lying because they've got things in place. And I mean, the thing is that you can understand if a lot of people are overstaying, it's like a kick in the teeth, isn't it? It's like they've allowed you to come in and you've now abused that hospitality. You're more or less saying, listen, I know you've given me 6 months, but stuff you, I'm staying as long as I feel like staying. And that doesn't go down well. So, fees are payable up front. So if you are going to apply for the 20 years, you have to make sure you have all your information correct. You know exactly what visa you're applying for, because if they refuse your visa or if they reject your visa, you don't necessarily get your money back. I mean, if it's something small and I think if they reject it, you don't lose your money. But if they've accepted it and then down the line they've noticed some inconsistencies and you put something wrong in there, you can lose that money. So make sure they have something called document check. That checks all your documents, make sure they're legit, make sure it'll pass and get through. And there's a premium 1 day turnaround, I think, for 257. But I don't know who's running that service. How do you know whoever's running that service isn't with the government and is not giving the names of the people who have applied for the 20 years? And even though it doesn't go through, they have your name and your details. So I'm just saying, I don't know. It could be quite legitimate. It could be third party. They could be independent. I don't know, because I've never used them and I don't need to use them. But it's an important thing to note. What else? You know what? Including myself, just don't take what I say. Because you get a lot of do-gooders, you get a lot of people who give out information and their intentions are good, but the information is either outdated or it's incorrect or they've missed out something, and it can really stitch you up. So make sure anything you hear, make sure you double check it. If you get it from 3 sources that say the same thing, it usually means the information is correct. So just don't listen to any Tom, Dick and Harry telling you about what you must do from what you can't do, because you could end up out of the country on your ear. I'm just sharing information because I think it's important that you know that you're putting your neck on the line if you're applying for the 20 years. It's not that straightforward. There's a lot of, it's very, very complex. It's made to look simple, but it's not. So that's that. Yeah, there's some people who want to come in on the 10-year rule. So if we could put the 20-year rule aside for a moment, you cannot have spent more than 18 months out of the country during the first 10 years. During the 10 years, unlawful residence with a break of a period of continuous lawful residence. So if you try to become lawful, it looks like your stay has to start from scratch. What I mean by that is that it's similar to what I said before. It's a similar process. You can't have been here unlawfully. You can't have overstayed and then claim from the beginning of your overstay period. You have to claim from the 10 years, from the moment you are legit, from the moment you've stabilised yourself. If you've exceeded 14 days after your visa is expired, that's going to be considered a gap. And once again, you're going to have to start from scratch from the time you got your visa done properly. And that's when it starts all over again. It's all about timing, really, because they change these laws every bloody 5 minutes. And something you was allowed to do maybe last year in November, you can't do it now. So these laws keep creeping in. That's why it's really important to get a credible immigration lawyer who's not going to rip you off, who's not going to say they can do something when they can't. And that is why I'm giving you all the information so you know what your chances are. Only you know your situation. You don't want everybody to know your situation. You don't want to put it out there in the hands of a third party and then you don't stand a chance in hell and you've made yourself vulnerable. So that is why I am offering this information. Don't want to bother with the 20 years route? Want to apply through your children who are born in the UK after 2006 and are registered as British citizens. One or both of you have to be British citizens. Have you both had lawful continuous stay for 10 years preceding the application? Has the child lived in the UK for 10 years prior to the application? The child must be under 18, must have lived in the UK for at least half of the time, which is probably about 9 years, needs to be resident in the UK for 7 years. Child could not have been out of the country for more than 90 days. The child must be of good character. So if you've got one of these rebellious teens who's been kicked out of school, expelled from school or whatever, you're in problems there. You won't be able to get in on the basis of the child. You have to show evidence that you've been supporting the child. So have you all your child benefits, if you're entitled to them? Have you been saving them up and putting them into the child's account? Can you show what you're doing with that money? Have you been giving child support? You know what I mean? All those kind of things count to show subsistency and, you know, your good intentions for the child. I'll tell you something, it's not easy. I'm just whizzing through it just so it keeps your mind active and alert about what is required. And, you know, Shamima Begum, she lost her British citizenship. So if she was born in the country and lost her citizenship, what say you? Now, they're claiming, to be honest, I thought that they could boot her out based on the fact that she was out of the country for 6 months or more than 2 years. But I didn't realise that didn't apply to people born in the country. It only applied to people outside who come in and are naturalised. But guess how they got this one in? Apparently, because she can claim a citizenship through someone else, that's how they did it. Apparently, because her husband is a Dutch national, she can claim that nationality. And because her mother is a Bangladeshi national, and under Bangladeshi law, the nationality of the mother can go to the child, she can claim that nationality. So she's not stateless. So they have reneged all responsibility for her. And they are citing the risk and security and all that stuff. But my point is that if they can not accept, they didn't deport, but not accept a British citizen into the country, what about you who are not born here? Or you who have British passports? That's all I'm saying. Yeah, so that's enough. This was quite a long video and it needs to stop now. So I hope you find it useful. Bye-bye.